everybody. Episode 68 of Christian Geeks Rockcast. And I'm Steve, and we got Britt over there.
What's up?
And then we have a special guest for episode 68. It's actually someone that we talked about a few episodes ago. We apparently really like bass players. He's one of the best we know, Monty Colvin.
All true.
Welcome to the rock. I say welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Rockcast, because we actually, on the first episode, we said we're borrowing this because I messaged you and asked you if it was okay, and you said it was fine.
Oh yeah,
we borrowed Rockcast from Monty and his podcast. So welcome.
You owe me money for that, I think.
I will give you a percentage of every penny we've made so far.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, well,
it's nothing.
Combined with what I make for mine, it'll, be a couple of bucks.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, for those of you who know him, probably he needs no introduction, but Monty is best known as bass player for and singer at times for Galactic Cowboys, which is one of our favorite sort of metal bands that we talk about often. We covered their debut album several episodes ago and gushed all over it, of course. We'll talk about a lot of stuff over the next hour or so about history and where he's come from, and then we'll get into some new stuff for Galactic Cowboys.
New stuff.
Hope so.
Yes. Oh yeah. So I'm wearing the t-shirt that you designed for the last album, which this is one of those things that it's bizarre because I go back and look, and that was 2017. That's 7 years ago. Does it feel that long to you?
I guess in some ways it feels longer, and some ways it doesn't seem that long. It's hard to believe it's been like 7-8 years now. So,
well, I've often said,
doing. What's that?
I was just going to say, like, that was one of those albums that came out. I wasn't really expecting it. I didn't have it on my bingo card for that year, but when it came out and it got in my mailbox, and I think I got the download first and then the vinyl later, but I just remember thinking this, like, you guys didn't skip a beat. Like, it was just, in fact, cool. I think it was better than some of the latter years.
Oh, absolutely. It was so good, man. Zombies is still one of my favorite songs of yours. Like, that song, and that's saying something because I have a lot of favorite songs by the Galactic Cowboys, but Zombies made it, and the whole album is great, but that song, I'm a Walking Dead fan, so that song made it.
I like the first like 5 or 6 seasons.
Oh, yeah.
And then it turned it into like one of the worst shows I've ever seen.
Oh yeah. They definitely jumped the zombie at some point.
Yeah, I quit watching it after a while, but man, the first 5 or 6 seasons were great. And I kind of got the idea for that song from that show, and kind of, because I thought, that's kind of the way it would work for me, probably. I would find this perfect person that, love of my life or something, and then the zombie apocalypse would happen and ruin everything. That was kind of the idea of that.
I kind of had the same fear when I was younger that I would, because I was a good Christian boy, and I was like, what's going to happen is I'm going to get engaged, and then like the night before my wedding, Jesus would come back, and I would never get to experience marriage.
Yeah. Isn't that just like Jesus? Just kidding.
Well, he actually waited, so that's good.
That was nice.
Let's go back to the beginning, and because I mean, it's no we can't deny we generally cover Christian rock, but we also do some sort of Christian adjacent stuff, some things that are, and you guys, willingly or not, kind of got lumped into some of that in the early days. I think with some Sam Taylor's, connections, and then, but you had one foot in that world back then too, which I want to get a little bit into that. But kind of, where did you get your start? How did you get started in music? I know you're a multi-instrumentalist, but bass is, of course, your primary instrument. But how'd you get started? What were your influences? That kind of stuff.
I started really late. I didn't actually start playing guitar till I was in high school. And then I went to college and, spent most of my time practicing and trying to write songs. And so, I was a late bloomer, and I got in a cover band playing guitar for about a year or so. And then I got this call from a Christian artist named Morgan Cryar in the 80s, and he needed a bass player. And so I didn't even own a bass at the time, but I said, yeah, I can do it. And so I went out and bought a bass, and they flew me down to Houston, and I auditioned and somehow got the job and toured with Morgan for about a year, when we were playing like everything from churches and coffee houses and, just all these different little gigs. And then we played, playing big festivals and, with like 10,000 people. And so I got a lot of experience in that. But Morgan actually let us go to do like a solo thing on his own with tracks. And so he just let the whole band go. And from that, the guys that were in, his backup band, we started another band called The Awful Truth. And, we put out one album and broke that up. From there, I immediately started Galactic Cowboys with our drummer, Alan Doss. And that was kind of how it all kind of developed. One thing led to the next, and it ended up being a nice long career.
That's great. Yeah. Do you remember what years you were with Morgan Cryar, or what year?
That was probably I think that was like 80, 85, maybe right in there, 85, 86. I know we played Cornerstone with him, and a couple festivals like that. But
because the radio station that I worked at, we had him in for a concert one time, and I remember we were eating at Shoney's after the concert because it's the only thing that was still open in the town where I grew up after a concert. And he was actually telling me, because I think the King's X guys did some backup for him as well, didn't they?
Yeah,
back in the day, because he was telling me, because he was asking me what kind of music I liked, and I told him, and he was like, "You should check out this band." But he didn't mention The Awful Truth, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I met Doug Pennick when I was in college, and they were a cover band at that point called Sneak Preview. And I was like hanging out with them and, just being, a fan. And then they moved to Houston, and I ended up getting married. And I think somebody like Doug or somebody told him that I could probably play bass for him, because they were going to leave Morgan and needed to replace them with new guys. And I was one of those guys that got mentioned. And so I flew down and got the job and basically replaced Doug. So
that's awesome. So The Awful Truth, I know that there's a little bit of we won't have to get into the sordid details of that particular band, but I know there's been there's a re-release of that album that's come out recently. Do you have anything to do with that, or is it just
No, it's one of those deals where somebody buys the rights to it and then just puts out, re-releases the album. And that's what happened. Let's see, what is this? I don't know. It was a label. They also put out a bunch of the Galactic reissues and stuff like that. But we really don't have anything to do with it. It's just we don't really get anything from it. And
too bad.
They put it out there and kind of keeps our name alive. So I guess that's good.
Yeah, for sure. So the I guess the beginning of Galactic Cowboys and kind of getting started and getting signed. I mean, because you guys went from really, I mean, I guess The Awful Truth had a little bit of cachet, but it's like suddenly you guys signed with David Geffen, and that feels like a big sort of coming out of the gate debut. I mean, you weren't on Metal Blade, you weren't on kind of one of these small indies, you were kind of on a bigger label. How did those dominoes fall?
Well, after I left The Awful Truth, Alan and I, the drummer, just started writing new songs, and we put together, the Galactic Cowboys, and we just started writing and playing out, and all of a sudden, we got a chance to go out on tour with King's X. We were unsigned. Nobody knew who we were. And we just ended up opening for King's X on this East Coast tour. And by the time, even before we were done with it, we had an offer, to sign with a label. And we came back home and did a showcase, and like 10 labels showed up, and one of them was Geffen. And the guy, his name was Gary Gersh. He was like, yeah, let's do this. And they offered us this huge contract. If, this is the end of the 80s when record labels still gave you big contracts,
Right.
And yeah, it was crazy. It was, happened really fast. And they told us, you're going to be, the biggest band in the world. And we were like, great, but, unfortunately, Nirvana came along and they kind of turned their attention to that. And we were kind of swallowed up in that. So, but we did a couple of cool albums for them, and got to tour a lot. And so that's kind of the way it goes in the music biz.
I mean, in my world, and I think Britt's world, it's like those two albums are pretty legendary, though. So it's like, for what it was, it's like those things. Like I talk about the debut album, and I talked about this on that podcast where it's like I moved to Atlanta from this small town where I grew up, and the first CD I ever bought at a record store was your first album. And like, so that sort of like laid the foundation. And it's kind of silly, but we wax poetic a lot on this podcast about how music has affected us. It's sort of like laid the musical foundation for my adulthood, so to speak, which is, for what it's worth, that album will always hold that place in my history.
Oh, well, thank you. We just made, some music that we thought was fun, and we didn't really put any kind of rules on ourselves or restrictions. We just went for it. And, I wanted to do something that, was just fresh. And I kind of think we did. I mean, I think we were kind of ahead of our time. I don't think a lot of people got it because we were hard to categorize. And so, we weren't an easy sell. And I don't think Geffen knew what to do with us. And so, we didn't, it didn't do what we thought it would. But at the same time, I'm still proud of that music, because I think there's just some really cool stuff that I don't think had been done before, honestly. I think you know, you hear a lot of the stuff that came after it, you know, Avenged Sevenfold and a lot of the metalcore and stuff like that, where they fused melody in with, you know, metal. And but you know, I hear that a lot from people that, you know, they love those albums and it meant a lot to them. And it's great to hear, because we didn't know, you know, back then there was no real internet. And so we didn't know what really people were thinking of it, other than when we played live. But you know, now we get all this feedback all these years later, and, you know, it's nice to hear.
Well, you know, your first couple albums, like you said, they were hard to categorize, but I think for many of us, that's why we liked it. I think that
Sure.
that there were a lot of people, especially during the 80s, a lot of they thought they had to categorize it in order to sell it, in a sense, you know. It's one of the reasons why The Princess Bride flopped, is because they didn't know what it, like, they couldn't tell people what it was. What is it? Is it a comedy? Is it a fantasy? Is it a love story? Is it all this? It's like, yes, it's all of it, you know. And you guys are kind of in that same boat of doing something original and fun and kind of a mashup. But I think a lot of people had other interests outside of whatever sort of cliquish category they were in than maybe they were willing to admit to. And you guys were along those lines. Like, we do it because it's fun. And I was listening to this past weekend because we knew we were going to interview you. I was listening to The Awful Truth, and I'm assuming you wrote a good portion of that material as well. And a lot of that style, you can see a lot of that style. And I guess I'd always thought Sam Taylor had been a big influence on your guys' sound, but it really seems like you guys had a lot of that already, even before you met Sam.
Yeah, actually, with The Awful Truth, our guitar player was writing most of that. I wrote I wrote a couple of the songs on there that were more in the heavy direction, more metal. And when I left, I knew at that point, you know, I want to take this in that direction,
Right.
you know. And so when I started Galactic, I was like, you know, I want to make this, you know, heavier and more thrash, and, you know, kind of go more in that direction, except, you know, come up with these, you know, melodies that are almost pop music, you know. And so yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of gradually developing in The Awful Truth, and, you know, kind of continued after that.
Cool. And I did have one question, because I don't think I've seen this anywhere. So, like, you guys did Machine Fish. I also love Machine Fish. I put that in the same category. I know the production's different and all that sort of stuff, but how much of Machine Fish was written before a lot of stuff with the record companies happened? Like, were you guys planning on that being your third album with Geffen, and that fell through, or like, how much of that stuff was written ahead of kind of switching over to Metal Blade?
It was actually written after we got dropped. And so once we got dropped by Geffen, we didn't really know what we were going to do. And we even broke up for like a little period of time. But I was like, nah, come on, let's keep writing. Let's just, you know, try to get re-signed, you know? And so I was writing stuff like Stress, The Struggle, you know, a lot of these songs that were just, you know, frustrated and angry. And, you know, so that's when a lot of those were written, was like after we actually got dropped. And we did a bunch of demos, but no one was really wanting to sign us. And that's when Dane quit and Alan was ready to quit. And we were like, what are we gonna do? And maybe we'll just break up and do something else. But right in that period, I got a call from Metal Blade, and Brian Slagle was like, I love this stuff. I've heard the demos, let's do an album, And so we signed with him and did Machine Fish and followed that up with, I think, 3 others and an EP. And so he kept us going.
And one of my favorite songs, we talk about my playlist. I have a playlist of, like my favorite songs of all time. And like I said, Zombies is on there. And there's a decent amount of Galactic Cowboys, but one of them that always makes it is Young Man's Dream. That is one of the most beautiful songs. I just don't know if you have any thoughts about, I mean, obviously the song is sort of self-explanatory, but I don't know if you can just give any sort of insights as where that song kind of came from, because that was the 4th album, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, I can't comment too much on that because Ben wrote that.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and I could speculate on what it meant. I think what I've heard him say is that it was, I mean, I think we all had dreams when we first got signed by Geffen. And like I said, they were telling us, you guys are going to be huge and, we're going to push you until, everybody in the world knows who you are, and it didn't happen. And it was just, it was very frustrating and sad and all that, but I think maybe some of that is what he was talking about, but you'd probably have to ask him. But Ben
he
wrote
was
that.
the guy you were supposed to bring on, I guess. He was the guy you were supposed to, not Jeff, but the other, that was supposed to be Ben.
Yeah.
No. So no, that's one of those songs that, because I think for a lot of your fans, they were also getting into probably their 30s, right? They were getting into a kind of a
Right.
similar age where they were thinking, life hasn't really turned out the way I thought, but how do I dream a new dream, sort of thing? That sort of idea. How do I capture that sort of mentality? So yeah, I really love that song.
Yeah. Actually, probably shouldn't say this, but I was already 30 when we got signed by Geffen. And so I started my career really late. Ben wasn't too much younger than I was either. So we were older when we started, I mean, any more bands that get signed, they want you to be in your 20s and, and all that stuff. But we were an older band. And so, yeah, by the time we did our like 3rd and 4th albums, we were in our mid-30s. And so,
Well, all I can say is, as I'm in my 50s now, and I feel like a lot younger than, say, my parents' generation was in their 50s. No offense to my parents, of course. But then, it's like like you guys and King's X and some other bands that we like, they're in their 60s now. And it's like still putting out good music. And so it's like, and clearly you don't have the look of a 60-something-year-old person, but it's like,
thank you.
it's like one of those things where it's like 60 is like probably the new 40 from, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, that's true.
Exactly.
To coin a phrase.
Well, have you seen those memes where it's got like Mr. Roper and people like that from the 70s, and it was like he was 42 and she was, and you're like, man, I thought those people were so old.
Oh yeah, like Wilford Brimley from Splash was like 50.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
But yeah, I will claim youth as long as I can.
Yeah, I mean, this is just who I am, and I don't know. maybe the music keeps you feeling young or something, but just keep going,
never
keep
change,
creating.
man.
Yeah.
I think that as long as you guys have I mean, and you posted something a month or two ago about like when the three of you guys, minus Alan, got together, and I was like, this is a little curious that they're all kind of hanging out together. And then of course it turned into something like a week or so later, whenever you guys teased the new album. But it's like, but just the fact that you guys are still sort of continuing to go on and connect with each other, and I mean, it's like, obviously there's demand out there for it because there's people like us who want to buy it. And there's several hundred people that have already, pledged to the Kickstarter, and there's more to come. So there's clearly still an audience for it. So it's like, the fact that you guys are continuing to feed that is a blessing, I think, to all of us too.
Oh, well, cool. Yeah, we've been talking about this for, years now, since the last album. And, we've had a lot of people saying, why don't you guys do a, GoFundMe, or, and I'm like, I don't know anything about that, So if somebody wants to do that, I'll play, I'll write songs, but I just didn't want to deal with any of it. And plus I just didn't know, whether, we were gonna have the interest to do it. And so, finally, we talked several times over the last couple of years, and I finally said, listen, if you guys want to do the Kickstarter, figure it out, and I will help promote it as much as I can. And, if it works, then we'll do it. So we finally got around to talking about it. And I got to give the credit to Ben on the Kickstarter thing, because he did almost all the work on that. I flew down to Houston a few weeks ago, and we got together and made the little promo video. But he did all the stuff, setting it up and all that kind of stuff. So kudos to Ben. And we didn't know what kind of reaction we'd get, but we made like 25 grand in the first few days. And we're like, wow, okay. Unfortunately, we've got a long way to go on it. And we're trying to, spread the word, and hopefully, get it out there so people will donate. We've only got, I think, 40 some odd days left that you can donate, and as of today. And we're up to, I think, 48,000, or we need 70. And I know that sounds like a lot, but it takes a lot to make an album. And people think, oh, you can just do that in your house on your computer. Well, maybe you can make some kind of album, but we want to make a good one. And, there's just a lot of things that go into it. And plus, we're basically our own record company at this point. We're going to, we're going to produce the albums and, get them manufactured, the vinyl, CDs, the t-shirts, the whole bit, and then we're going to mail them out. And so we're basically our own, we're our own record company right now. So we set the goal at 70,000, and we're like 60% there. So we're hoping that people will get on board and help us out, because we really can't do it without them. So.
Yeah, I know there's been a little pushback, because I've seen it, with with the cost of some of the tiers and stuff like that. Explain a little bit about sort of the nature of supporting the band versus buying a record from Amazon, that kind of thing, because I think people get that kind of confused.
Yeah, and of course, the higher the amount, the more stuff you get. I mean, in some of the higher tiers, it's like you get your name on the album. You can come to the studio and hang out while we're making it. There's all kinds of stuff besides just the CD and a T-shirt or something. And plus, yeah, you're basically helping us make it. And so, and besides that, you can donate anything you want. You don't have to, donate onto the tiers. If you want to donate $20, or whatever you want to donate, that's fine. But, we just, because of the way Kickstarter works, you set up these, tiers, and that's just the way it works. And if we don't raise the money, we don't get anything. Right. So if we don't meet the goal, there's no album. And we'll just retire or something. But it's just, we're giving it a shot. We want to do this. We'd love to. We want to give our fans one more album, or however many, but we want to do this, and asking for their help, and if they help us, we really appreciate it.
Well, so I have two questions. First question, is there a tier where somebody can give and you do a painting of them, like a portrait?
Good question. No.
No. No. All right.
If you want a portrait, you just contact me.
Oh, okay.
And that will keep me alive to where I can still, write and play.
Right.
So, but I'd probably be open to something.
Well,
what you can get though.
Go ahead.
What you can get though is a T-shirt that will have one of my paintings on it. And would you mind me showing it to you?
I would not at all.
Let's go.
All right. No one's seen this yet, but other than, I think, Ben posted. This is going to be the T-shirt design. If I can get it.
It looks awesome.
It's good. It's a cross between Space in Your Face album cover and the Gas Fist, our mascot. So anyway, this will be on a T-shirt if this thing happens. And so there's that.
And I can say from
we can
experience
talk about my art later if you want. What's that?
Wearing this shirt around has gotten a lot of comments over the years because there's only a small pocket of people who know who Galactic Cowboys is, but it's like the Gas Fist guy just gets comments.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my second question was the serious question: how much of the album is already written? Or is that part of, like, are you waiting to get the 70,000 before you guys really sit down and start writing? Or has that been happening for 5 years?
Well, as far as a band, no, we have not written together yet. I've been writing stuff basically in my head, and I've recorded a few things, but just ideas. But I've been putting stuff together for about 4 years now. And so I got a lot of stuff that, I'd love to record with the guys. And I'm sure they've got stuff that they've been working on. But if we can meet this goal and it's going to be a thing, then yeah, I think we'll quickly get together and start putting songs together, and that would be awesome.
That's great. I don't want to ignore the other parts of your career that we can insight. And so, by the way, thank you for this.
Oh, good, you got it.
Yeah. So Crunchy was talk to us about how Crunchy got started and what this, which is kind of we'll call it your solo stuff, but maybe there's a band part of it. So talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, at the end of the 90s, I was getting pretty disillusioned and everything with Galactic. Things weren't going well. And so I decided I wanted to do like a solo album. And so I won't get into everything because it's pretty complicated, but I got signed by a label uh, to do that first one that you just held up. And I called it Crunchy. And I did have some guys playing on that. Uh, but the label went bankrupt. The album was dead. And so I just started recording completely by myself. And I put out two more solo things called Crunchy on my own. And yeah, it's just, it's not, well, at least the first album wasn't, really galactic. It was more pop oriented, or at least, pop punk, stuff like that. But the second and third Crunchy albums are a little harder. And the last one, Loserville, was, definitely more galactic sounding because had a lot more kind of metal overtones in it and things like that. So yeah, I did three, solo albums, and they're out there. I have them actually on my
I
art
got them.
website.
I got them.
Nice. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for your support.
I don't know if that means how dead it was, but I got it. It was alive to me. I was like, yes.
Nice.
I dug the new sound. I dug that pop punk sound. I thought it was interesting, and it was a little different, and I appreciated it. I thought it was a cool album.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, it's melodic stuff. Everything I do, I try to keep melodic, and you know, um, but I'm I'm most proud of that Loserville album. I worked on that thing for 4 years. I did all the vocals, the background vocals, played all the guitars, bass, and I think it's one of the best things I've ever done. I'm just, still I love it, and I'm proud of it, whether anybody else liked it or not. So
I'm sure that it was well received in your Loserville circles, amongst other Loservilles. The other thing too that we touched on a little bit is, and I think this is probably what you maybe consider your primary job, is as an artist and taking commissions and doing portraits and things like that. And I've heard you talk about this on your podcast, but talk a little bit about how you got started in that, and sort of because you have a very unique style, which if anybody has a Galactic Cowboys album, there's a pretty good chance you've seen Monty's work. But talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I started, drawing in church when I was a kid, and my mom would just hand me like, one of the envelopes that you put the offerings in, and here, draw, so I started drawing like when I was just a kid, and then I got into it a lot more when I was in high school, and I started painting, and then I decided I'd go to college, and I ended up getting a degree in it. And then, when I got into the band thing, then there was a lot of opportunities for, album covers, t-shirts, all that kind of stuff. So, I did a lot of that. And then, people started going, oh, well, would you paint something for me? And so I started doing everything from family portraits to, you name it. And then I think it's probably been about 5 years ago, I started a website where I mainly just do rock stars, but I also do commissions still, and I do all kinds of stuff like, people's pets and, They just, they'll write me and say, or, if they have a favorite rock star they want me to do, I do a lot of those too. But yeah, I mean, here's the kind of stuff, like this is Dave Grohl. That's kind of stuff. I just did one of Bruce Springsteen, like the way that turned out. But do all kinds of rock stars and sell those on my website, and it's turned into how I make my living. So
that's great.
It's
good for you.
A great job. I love it.
You do magnets too, right? You sell magnets of a lot of these things.
Yeah. I got the little they're like miniature paintings, on these little refrigerator magnets. There's Ted Nugent and
the Nuge.
Yeah, love the Nuge. But yeah, so I do all that, and love that.
What's the website?
It's montycolvinart.com. Monty Colvin Art.
We'll link it in the show notes too, so people can go see your stuff.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, and the other thing I wanted to touch on, I think we maybe mentioned it earlier, is your podcast, which you've been doing for an eternity, which I think you were one of the, I mean, at least in my world, you were one of the first people to even do a podcast. Like what inspired that?
I went to this convention a couple of years ago, a podcasters convention. And one of the guys there was like, man, you're like an OG. And I'm like, well, what's that? Original gangsta of, podcasting. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, you were doing this before any of us. And what happened is I worked for a while in this factory, and back in the early, I don't know, 2000s or something, when podcasts were just starting. And I was so bored doing this job. I was doing like faux painting and stuff in this manufacturing place. And I would get really bored. And so I figured out how to download these podcasts, and there weren't very many of them. I think maybe the Rock and Roll Geek Show.
I forgot about that one.
And Bob Nalbandian had, I think, one at the time. And, but it would give me something to listen to at work. And I was like, man, this sounds so much fun. I would love to do a show myself. And I ran onto these, at the time, these new Mac computers that, these laptops that you could record a podcast, and then you could make a website and put the podcast onto the website and then launch it. And you could do it all right there, And so I bought the computer, and I just went for it. I just started making shows, and in the beginning they were really bad. And I just kept at it and just tried to improve. And 270 some odd podcasts later, I know a little bit more what I'm doing now, and I think they're listenable now. So, but yeah, I just never stopped doing them. I don't know why. I didn't, and I still don't really care how many people listen. I just do it for myself and fun. And I know people do listen because I get all kinds of emails and messages from people, but I've tried all kinds of different things on the show, and it's kind of a mixture of comedy, rock and roll, pop culture. I try not to get too political, but once in a while I do. And it's just I just try to be myself and try to be honest.
Well, it's on my must listens when it comes out, and it's a and I mentioned before, and I think I said this before we started recording, but it's like because I've been listening since the very beginning. And I remember I was going back and I was thinking, I remember emailing you one time because I don't even remember why. I don't remember if you asked for people to email you or whatever, but that was over 15 years ago and I was like, and that's when I looked that up today, I was like going, dang, that's been a long time ago. And
yeah,
but I was in my 30s back then. I was a young man.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, to give you an idea, like I used to have my daughter, Zoe, come on and we would do these CD reviews.
Bloody Metal
And
Skulls.
yeah, she would read them, and it was really funny to hear like a 9-year-old reviewing the new Ozzy album,
Mm-hmm. Those are great.
In all honesty, I wrote those for her and she would just read them. But it sounded like she knew what she was talking about.
It was great.
She didn't.
It was great.
She didn't know who any of these people were, like who's Kill Switch Engage, so, but now, she just turned 25 now, and she just got married, and I just saw her over the weekend, and I'm just like, man, it seems crazy. She was the little kid on the cover of All Day Sucker, and she's 25. Yeah, that's her, but
that's
she
crazy.
just kind of grew up with all this stuff, and but that's how long I've been doing it now, and doesn't seem possible. But
no, well, it's like it was recently. I was thinking about. I was like, he should get Zoe back on there to do the Bloody Metal Skulls, and then, and then you mentioned something. This has been a couple of years ago, and she just graduated college or something. I'm like, what? Like she probably doesn't want to go back on Daddy's podcast anymore.
Yeah, probably not.
No, that's awesome. And the thing is, like, part of we call Hours of Rockcast. I've never really heard that before you did that. So, and part of that is a bit of an homage to you and your podcast, just simply because I'm listening to, you're the only podcast I've listened to consistently for this long, but also it's a bit of an inspiration because Britt and I have been friends for, not a terribly long time, maybe 4 or 5 years, but our wives work together, and we won't get into that story again. But generally speaking, we would get together and talk, and it's like, I was like, and he's got podcasts, and he's had podcasts for a while. And I'm like, I've always wanted to do a podcast, but I didn't think I could pull it off like you. I didn't think I could do the one man, one mic. I don't have the voices. I just, but so that's how we started this thing.
Nice. Well, I was influenced by, people like Adam Carolla, because he started his like maybe a year before mine. And so, yeah, I mean, I do a lot of editing in my shows because, when I just talk normally, I'm gonna and and all that. And so I try to cut all that out and just kind of make it an easier listen for people. But yeah, I had no experience when I started. I just started doing it and talking about stuff that interests me. And I just hoped that other people, would be interested too. And I got started by, I did I went through all the Galactic albums and all the Crunchy and the Awful Truth, and I just go track by track, and I just talk about that stuff. But after I got through all that, I was like, I want to branch out. I want to start talking about other things. If there's a good show on TV, I want to talk about it. Or if I get a new album, I want to tell people about it. And so that's kind of how it started, and that's still how it is now. I'm a little better at it.
That's awesome. Well, I'll link to that as well in the show notes so people can go, because you've got you've got a website. You still publish it on the website? I know it's everywhere, or not everywhere. It's like on Apple.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's on like one of those iTunes store, if that's still a thing. And but yeah, it's montysrockcast.com if you want to just go on there and hit the button and you can listen to it right there on the website. But where are you guys located? If
Atlanta.
you don't mind me asking you some questions.
Atlanta.
We're in the Atlanta area. Yeah.
Oh, cool. You know, you might think about next year. I think it's in March. There's a podcasters convention called Rockin' Pod, and I'm planning on going it. I'm going to take some of my art, and it's cool. There's just like hundreds of podcasters show up, and you can promote your show and interview people or whatever. But anyway, just something to keep in mind.
Do you know where it's going to be?
Yeah, it's in Nashville.
Oh, okay.
So
that's just right up the road.
Yeah, it's a long drive for me, but I'm planning on going again.
That's cool. So, that's a good thing to keep an eye on. Well, we'll probably get ready to wrap up here, but I do want to reiterate the Galactic Cowboys Kickstarter will still be plenty live by the time this episode's come out. They'll probably have a month left. So
cool.
So people can get out there and pledge to that.
Yeah, I appreciate it so much, guys. We need all the promotion we can get, and I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, just go to Kickstarter, put in Galactic Cowboys, and it should come right up, and you can just go in there and donate whatever you want. But we need your help.
Yeah, and I know you can add on hard copies. Look, if you buy a CD, you can add a vinyl to it if you want. I think that's actually cheaper to do that than it is to do the first vinyl tier, or the first tier that includes vinyl, which I think maybe also includes a t-shirt or something. But regardless, it's like that's, if you're looking for a maybe less expensive way to get a record, that's a good way to do it. But yeah, definitely check it out. Support the guys. It's like, I think Britt can speak from this too. It's like, I don't think you guys have ever done anything that wasn't first class for the most part. So it's like, and especially now, I think now that you're not having to crank out a record every year for a record company, you actually are going to have, I think it'll be more cared for. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of always done just whatever we wanted, whether we had a label or not. That was kind of part of the deal. Is like, well, we'll sign with you, but we're gonna do what we do, and do whatever we want. And so we're definitely gonna do that again if we get together. It's exciting to think about. I can't wait. I hope it happens. A lot of people are already considering it a done deal. Like, oh, when are you going to do this? And I'm like, well, we still have to raise the money, so, but if we can, I think it's going to be cool. I've got some stuff cooking that I think is going to rock, and, it would be exciting to record again. So
excellent. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for joining us. I mean, it's like, I know Britt and I speak for him too. He can speak for himself, but it's like, it's an honor having you on, but just because of how much you've done for us over the years.
Well, love you guys. Thank you so much. I heard your podcast, and I'm like, these guys are cool. I really appreciate them. And it was a pleasure to be on. Thank you.
Thanks, man. And we'll definitely be promoting it as we go. And I'm not going to say it's a done deal, but we'll say we're really looking forward to another album for sure.
Thank you. All right. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, everybody.